رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وما أرسلناه إلا رحمة للعالمين. صدق الله العظيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا سيدي يا نبي الله. Of course, we through Sharif, because we mentioned the Hadith Sharif. The Prophet ﷺ says that whoever sends durood upon me once, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends 10 blessings on that person. So especially in this blessed month, in the masjid, should read through Sharif in abundance. So couple times join in your salatu wassalamu alayka ya sayyidi ya rasulullah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya sayyidi ya nabiyullah. Salatu wassalamu alayka ya sayyidi ya rasulullah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya sayyidi ya khayra khalqillah. Alhamdulillah. Today we are gathered here inshallah for this course inshallah of the next 5 weeks or so. And inshallah we mention the lessons you can learn from the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Inshallah over these next 5 weeks or so we'll try my best to go through the main events which took place in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the lessons which we could take as ummatis today from the life of our beloved Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. So last week we had a bit brief with the rest of the students which were here, in which I mentioned about the wiladat, the blessed birth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the ayyam al-rida'at and Sayyidina Halima radiyallahu ta'ala an, the days which they nursed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we got to the stage in which we mentioned about the wafat of the blessed mother of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also in our last week's short session, the warmer session, I mentioned about the iman and the faith of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, how we believe in the iman of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's parents, and we believe that both of them were believers. And at today's day and age, this is something we need to be very aware of, very careful of is of iman, our faith, and what we believe. But the actual reality is that, as Ash'ari beautifully says, he says in the Urdu language that Zindagiya Khatam hui aur kalam toot gaye. He says that lives, people have spent their lives and kalam toot gaye, so pens are broken. People have broke so much that their pens come to the stage which they end up breaking. Lekin tera awsaf ka ek baab pura bina waqt ya Rasulullah. They were one complete chapter of the actual awsaf, the sifat, the characteristics of the Prophet have not been complete. Subhanallah, this is the love which these people had for the Prophet. And some people, they spent their life just studying the Seerah, studying the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And at the end, what do they say? They say that as we have spent our whole life at the doorstep of the Prophet ﷺ. So inshallah, over these few weeks, we'll mention the lessons, because today, as you could say, is not impossible, but it will be very difficult for one to go through the life of the Prophet from the beginning right to the end. It will be very difficult because obviously time doesn't allow us to do so, and also nobody will have the actual capacity to do how the Prophet deserves to describe the life from the beginning to the end. So inshallah, our aim inshallah is to learn some lessons as a class. This, you could say this is a class. I learn from you, you learn from me, and inshallah the best thing we could do is do amal upon this, to act upon whatever we learn, because the amal of a believer is better than his actions. So if amal of a believer is better than his intention. So if our intention is better, so if a person makes a good intention at least, okay, after this lesson we're going to try to do this, we're going to try to do this in our life, that is a big thing, making an intention to do something good. Inshallah, our intentions for these gatherings inshallah are all good. Inshallah, we learn from the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we try to pass the message on to others inshallah. Inshallah, I would like to start from the wafat of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Their blessed mother Sayyidah Amina radiyallahu ta'ala anha, they left this world. The Prophet was at a very young age. The father passed away. Sayyidina Abdullah radiyallahu before the Prophet was born. So the Prophet was born as a yatim, as an orphan. That's why today in Islam we see that we are very encouraged to look after orphans. who feed the orphans. Why? Because this is a great charity. The Prophet was an orphan. The Prophet said, he who looks after an orphan in this dunya, me and him will be together to join the figures like this in the akhirah. So how much of a great blessing is to look after an orphan. So after the Prophet's beloved mother left this world, their grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, looked after them. And even they knew in the time of Jahiliyyah, the Prophet was a young child. Because the Prophet, as this is also another matter of Aqidah, belief. We believe that the Prophet was a messenger. Whilst Adam al-Islam was between Ma and Nuh. Had the same Hadith, if kuntu Nabi wa Adam bayna al-ma'i wa tin. The Prophet says that I was a messenger, whilst Adam al-Islam was between water and clay. So they seen the actions which the Prophet were doing as a young child. So their grandfather Abdul Muttalib, they mentioned that they used to have a great sitting. So in the shade of the Kaaba, they used to have a bed, they used to have a firash. And upon that bed, nobody would sit on that bed because they would have fear of Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib. So whenever their grandchildren and children would sit, they would sit around that bed to sit in the gathering of the elders. But when the Prophet used to come, they used to sit on top of that bed. And Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib didn't tell the Prophet off. They said, this grandson of mine is of a great shan. So they were people of knowledge, they were people of farasat. They seen that Prophet is going to be somebody great in the future. But this is in the days of the Prophet's childhood. And the many great events which took place in the life of the Prophet in their childhood. But inshallah, I want to focus more on the after the I'lan al-Nubuwah, after Wahi of the Prophet, all the lessons we can learn then. So the next topic I would like to mention is the Wahi. The beginning of Wahi, the Prophet when Wahi came to the Prophet, what was the state then? And what conditions, what did they go through? So I'm trying to miss out some parts as well because it's very difficult to get everything condensed into one. But the main thing, inshallah, I'll try my best to highlight them. But the Prophet, they were known amongst the people as Sadiq and Amin, the truthful and the trustworthy. So one of the waqiyat with the Ashab Seerah mentioned, the Prophet went on a journey to Yemen, to Sham, to Syria. Today they're in Syria, but at the time all that area was called Sham. The Prophet traveled to Sham, and on this journey to Sham, the Qafla the Prophet was with, they were a young child. The people of Syria say that they were 12 or 15 years old, and whilst they were on this Qafla, they stopped by a place in which there was a rahib, you could say a pope, a person of the Injil, who knew he was Ahlul Kitab, we call them Arabic, the people of the book. So these people, they knew that the Prophet was coming. Because in the Injil, in the Torah, as I mentioned in the Quran Pak, the signs of the Prophet they were told before. But these people, the learned Jews, they knew that the Prophet was coming amongst them. So whilst this Qafla was going, they stopped at this place, and it got raining. So it started raining, and there was a cloud which was on top of the Prophet, sheltering the Prophet from the rain. And this Jew, he's seen this from inside his house. His name is Buhayra. I think there's ikhtilaf in the pronunciation of his name, but they mentioned Buhayra was his name. So he was from his house, he sees that there's shade upon the Prophet, which is not upon anybody else, the shadow, this great cloud, you could say, shadowing the Prophet. So amongst this, seeing this, he invited the Qafila in. He invited all of them in because he wanted to know that what is this great karamat, this great miracle which I am seeing. And then he called all of them in, but the Prophet was told to stay behind in the caravan because they were a child. So they stayed behind, and this Pope, he's seen that shadow, he stayed behind, that great cloud which was the top of the Prophet, he stayed behind. So then they realized, and they asked her who was underneath that shadow, who was behind the caravan. And said, oh, we left a child behind whose name is Muhammad. And upon seeing this, and this Pope, he was greatly pleased and he was happy because he knew the Prophet was the last messenger. But as it says in the Quran Pak, the Jews, they just didn't have the nasibat, they didn't have the qismat to accept the Prophet. As it says in the Quran Pak, يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم, that they knew the Prophet how they knew the child, how they knew their own children. So now you can think about this, how well does one know his child? It's not possible for one not to know his child in a good way. But they knew the Prophet how they knew their children. So they knew that the Prophet was the last messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but still they didn't accept the Prophet's message. And upon this, another great event which happened before the Wahi was the nikah of Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, the Prophet's first wife. So mashallah, the waqi of this is very beautiful also, in which the Prophet was known as Sadiq and Amin. And Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, she's a great successful businesswoman. Why? Because her father was a very rich man, Khuwaylid, from who she inherited and become a very successful woman. And for this is a lesson for our sisters, those which are listening. that Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala, they say they are the greatest role model for the women of today's day and age. How they were such a successful businesswoman, but still they were known as Tahira. They're still known as the one who is pure and who is chaste. So the lessons we could learn is that how you could be a great woman, but still you are the being pure, being rich, and being well off. It doesn't go against being a great woman. You could be a great woman and still be well off. So there's many lessons. Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala, my advice to sisters would be to study the seerah of Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala, learn about their life and how beautifully they lived their life and how they left the example for every believer who comes after them. So then Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala, they request for a nikah to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam through their uncles, and then this nikah takes place. Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala, they marry the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallam, they don't marry any other azwaj whilst they are married to Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. So whilst married to Khadija, they don't marry anybody else. And the age of the Prophet sallam, the Seerah, people of Seerah say the Prophet sallam age was 25 years old, and Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha age was 40 years old, which was a norm in them days. And you see, today's day and age is nothing which is wrong with that. Today's society, things are different. But in Islam, there's nothing wrong with this. Person is baligh, person is aqil, there's nothing clearly wrong with this. As we see the nikah of Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, al-Mu'mineen, one of the greatest Sahaba Ikram, even the Sahaba Ikram, they studied, they learned from Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, the daughter of Siddiq Akbar, so Siddiqa bint Siddiq, and the age of them while the Mabuzah was very young. There's ikhtilaf in it, but they were very young, which is confirmed. So after the nikah of Prophet Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha is mentioned in the Hadith of Bukhari Sharif, inshallah, which I'd like to mention in front of you, which is narrated by Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala, the mother of the believers. They say that Haris bin Hisham, they asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, kayfa ya'tik al-wahy? Ya Rasulullah, how does wahy come to you? Inshallah, now I'd like to speak upon the topic of wahy, which is one of the greatest things which happened in Islam, the wahy. And Jibreel Islam come and they sent wahy to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So through Jibreel Islam, Allah ta'ala sent wahy to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But this hadith which I'd like to share with you, this companion, they're asking the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, that how does wahy come to you? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam replies, Ahyanan ya'atini mithla salsalatil jarasi, that sometimes when wahy comes to me, it comes like the ringing of a bell. When a bell rings, and then from the sound of the bell, is of the scholars of hadith, the muhaddithin, they mention this ringing of the bell. Certain Prophet would find, they take meaning from the ringing of the bell. And the Prophet mentioned of this, وَهُوَ أَشَدُّهُ عَلَيَّ, that this ringing of the bell, this was the most severe, most hardest way of receiving wahy for me. Why? Because the ringing of the bell, from the voice the Prophet used to pick up the alfaz, used to pick up the meaning of the wahy is saying. But this is one of the ways which wahy used to come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So then, sometimes the Prophet continues to say, قَالُوا أَحْيَانًا يَتَمَثَّلِ الْمَلَكُ رَجُلًا, that sometimes an angel comes in the form of a man. So an angel comes in the form of a man and he speaks to me. فَيُكَلِّمُنِي فَأَعِي مَا يَقُولُ, and the angel will say to the Prophet what we have to say, and the Prophet would remember what this angel said. Jibreel Islam would come and they would come send this wahy to the Prophet, the Prophet would remember it. And in some places, first when Jibreel Islam used to come to the Prophet used to try to repeat after Jibreel Islam so they don't forget. But then the ayat of Quran Pak Surah Qiyamah, Allah Ta'ala sent those ayat down, Ya Rasulullah, don't hasten yourself with wahy. Don't try to pick you up. Don't try to pick you up from what Jibreel Islam is saying. Why? Because Allah says, Inna alayna jama'ahu wa Qur'ana. Allah Ta'ala says indeed that we are the one, we will gather it for you, we will make you remember it, and inshallah we will look after this way, so don't worry about it. Then Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, who is the Rawi of the Hadith, they continue to say that وَلَقَدْ رَأَيْتُهُ يَنْزِلُ عَلَيْهِ الْوَحْيُ فِي الْيَوْمِ الشَّدِيدِ الْبَرْدِ, that sometimes it will be a very severe cold day. It will be a very cold day, and Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu ta'ala, they said that I would see the wahy is coming to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wahy is coming to the Prophet in a very severely cold day. And Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu ta'ala said, فَيُفْسِمُ عَنْهُ وَإِنَّ جَبِينَهُ لَيَتَفَصَّدُ عَرَقًا. Subhanallah, the pasina, the forehead of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to be covered with sweat in this very severely cold day. And because of the severity, because of the wahy coming down, the Prophet used to be sweating in the cold day because of how heavy the wahy used to be on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As we see in the Quran Pak, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if we were to send this Quran Park down on a mountain, you can imagine how great a mountain is. That mountain would crumble, the mountain would crush. Why? Because the khashyat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mountain will crush. Subhanallah, look at the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam who's taken in this wahi, and what's stopping the Prophet to sweating. So now the lesson we could learn from this particular story is that how the Prophet is not a normal person like us. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if the Quran Park is to be sent down on a mountain, the mountain would crush and crumble. But the Prophet subhanahu, they are receiving this wahi without anything severely damaging them. So the lesson today, the Prophet is not a normal human like us. They are human, but they're not a normal human like us. As I mentioned last week also, because this is a great lesson. It's something we need to be very sure of, because this is one of the topics that people attack on in today's day and age. They say the Prophet is a man just like us. No, the Prophet is not a man just like us. The Prophet is a man, but they are a very special man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most beloved, Allah ta'ala, the most chosen man, that's who the Prophet are. Then the different way, this is just the different ways which wahi is to come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the common hadith, also in Bukhari Sharif, they mentioned that how sometimes the Prophet used to see a ru'ya salihah, so they will see a true dream. And in the morning, the person will wake up, and wherever they see the dream will be clear, like the sunrise. They'll be very clear, the person seen in the dream. So that's another form of wahi, which is come to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So then, subhanAllah, if we look at the first wahi, which come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Jibreel alayhi salam comes down, and in the common hadith in Bukhari Sharif also, the Prophet sallam, they used to like to be alone. So before this wahi used to come to the Prophet, used to go to the Ghar Hira, which is famous today also. The Prophet used to go there and used to do tahannus. And the people of Hadith Muhaddithin, they mentioned, why is tahannus? The person used to ta'abbud, they used to do ibadah. They used to go to separately in the cave and to go to ibadah there. And subhanAllah, did the lesson we could learn. And Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala an, for the sisters, how Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu anha used to come to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they used to come and bring food for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam all the way in Ghar Hira. We see today how that mountain is not easy to climb for those who have been to Hajj and Umrah. The mountain is very hard to climb. You take an hour and a half, and that's because they've also made stairs. They made it easier today's day and age. But in that zaman, you can imagine how Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala, a woman, they used to climb up the mountain to give food to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, give provision to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What their food used to be, then it used to be like a great meal how we have today, like 3-course meal. No, just give some dates, a bit of bread and a bit of water, a bit of milk. That's what they used to take for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but that's what they used to have in them days. And subhanAllah, once Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala, they were coming to give food, provisions to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Jibreel alayhi salam, who is the leader of all angels, they come down and said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, that Khadija is coming. Give her salam from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give her salam from herself. So this how great Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent salam down Sayyidah Khadija, and Sayyidah Jibreel, who is the leader of all angels. Angels, is meant to say they have 600 wings. One wing comes from the Mashriq to the Maghrib, and 600 of them mentioned like diamonds falling from these beautiful wings. A beautiful creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They gave a salam to who? Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, who is a woman. So today then it's all another thing we see about how Islam doesn't give women rights. The people mention how women are not looked up in Islam. So no. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Jibreel Islam was the greatest of the angels, they sent Islam to a woman who is the greatest of women. And so the Islam taught us respect of that woman, taught that women could also have a rank in Islam. So after this, Prophet used to go to Ghar Hira before this to go do worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then one day, say that Jibreel alayhi salam come down in the wahi to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He said, Iqra. The Prophet replies, Ma'ana biqari. And upon this, Ma'ana, this curriculum, the Muhaddithin, they mentioned so much about this great jumla, one sentence of the Prophet, Ma'ana biqari. They mentioned so much upon this jumla. And this khulasa, summary of that being the Prophet saying, some people try the Prophet saying, I can't read. That they try and make the Prophet look lower. That, okay, I'm not one to read. Ma'azala, but this cannot be the case. The Prophet is Ma'ana biqari, I am not one to read. Why? The Prophet was not taught to read or write by anybody like that. However, the Torah come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the Muhaddithin, they mentioned great verse upon this. But then the khulasa, the lesson we could take from this jumla, the Prophet is not like us. Again, the Prophet is not like us. For them saying this jumla doesn't mean the Prophet is just like us. No. The Prophet not being able to read doesn't mean the Prophet was not able to read. It's the beauty of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Saying Jibreel repeat this 3 times, Upon each time they grabbed the Prophet, they hugged the Prophet, they squeezed the Prophet. And third time after they squeezed the Prophet, they go, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. And then they repeat these verses, the first 5 verses of Surah Iqra, they are nazil to Prophet. SubhanAllah, even then, after this great kayfiyat which the Prophet went through, experiencing this great experience, what happens, where the Prophet go to? SubhanAllah, they go back, they return to Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. They come to the house and they say the Prophet looking very worried. And Sayyidah Khadija asked the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, what's wrong with you? The Prophet, in a very ajib kayfiyat, in a very strange kayfiyat, after seeing a great angel coming down to and saying these words to you, so the Prophet was in a great kayfiyat, in a great state. And then upon this, SubhanAllah, received the word of Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. When the Prophet comes back in this day, Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, they say the Prophet said to Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu zammiluni, cover me. Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala, they get the children for it, they cover the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then SubhanAllah, they give such beautiful words of comfort to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then, Ya Rasulullah, indeed, you are not one who will be wrong. Why? Because they say, Kalla wallahi ma yukhzika Allahu abada. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never put you to shame, never hurt you in any way. Why? What's the reason they give? Innaka latasilu rahima. That indeed you join people's family ties. You are one who joins people's family ties. وتحمل الكلة وتكسب المعدومة وتقرئ الضيف وتعين على نواعب الحق. That, Ya Rasulullah, you help the poor people. You look after those who have nobody, and those who have haqq, you help them. So Ya Rasulullah, the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not yukhzika, they will not harm you in any way, shape or form. SubhanAllah. So now look at this, Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala, lesson to take from this. Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, how beautifully she comforts the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam when the Prophet come back in this day. Now I've seen today they need, if a person to go like that home to his wife, probably just ignore and be like, the guy's gone mad or something. But no, these women, they are lessons for us. When I look at the life of the Prophet, the life of Sayyidah Khadija, these people, they are lessons for us. And they're saying how, it's an example for the people to come after. In the Zat, the Prophet says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, for you in the Prophet sallallahu the Uswa Hasana is a great example for you in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these things, the Azwaj Mutahharat, Prophet's blessed wives, the Prophet's immediate family, the Panjatan Parkas we refer to, it's also correct. In the life of these people, Sahaba Ikram, the lessons for us. Fi Rasulillah, you can say that these people are based around the life of the Prophet. The Sahaba Ikram radiallahu ta'ala anhum, how pure Jama'at it was. The Prophet taught them, and because of them, they passed the knowledge down. They passed the knowledge down, and from Nasl to Nasl is come today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is going to protect this religion till the day of judgment. But there are asbab in this world also. The ulama haq, the ulama rabbayin, starting from the Sahaba Ikram radiallahu ta'ala till the true scholars of today's day and age. I say true scholars because there are a lot of fake scholars today and age as well also. It's really closer to, and that's it. Imam Sahib has come across. No, this is not how it's done. The Sahaba Ikram, they used to spend their days and nights at the door of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, SubhanAllah, spent 3 years with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they are the Sahabi who narrates the most hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and they only spent 3 years with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? They mention in the hadith sharif that after I accepted Islam, I used to stay with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam all the time. I didn't ever care about how full my stomach was, how much I've eaten, how much I drank. And they mentioned that sometimes in Abu Hurairah they used to fall unconscious out of hunger. They used to be so hungry that they used to fall unconscious. You can imagine, look, today's day and age, we're far from 3 meals a day. These people normally went days and weeks without eating, to the extent which they felt unconscious. So people used to walk over them. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah. But still, why? They never left the company of the Prophet because they knew that Allah Ta'ala says, in the life of the Prophet is also a hasana for you. So they kept the company of the Prophet. The lesson we learn from this is that how we should try to spend as much as our life, as much as our time if you can't say at the doorstep of the Prophet today, but you could say studying the life of the Prophet, studying the Arabic language, studying the basics, then going to that stage where you could read the hadith of the Prophet SubhanAllah, understand what the Prophet is trying to say to us, and then mainly act upon that, which is the greatest lesson, is to act upon the knowledge which you have. So after this, the period of Wahy, the Prophet come to Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, where they were comforted by Sayyidah Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. And after this period, Wahy stopped for a short period also. And upon this, the Prophet, after this, the Prophet done a da'wah to Seerah, which is known as. So the person used to, they weren't told to preach Islam aloud. The person used to preach Islam quietly to the immediate family, Sayyidah Khadija, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Zayd bin Harith, Sayyidina Bilal, all these people the person was told to preach quietly first. Seerah is called. And the place of Dar Arqam used to be a place which the person used to gather the Sahaba around, those who were believers used to gather there and used to read the Quran and Pak. And subhanAllah, how beautiful is the Quran and Pak. It's mentioned that the waqia is quite long, but inshallah I try to cut it short. How Abu Sufyan, who come a Sahabi later, by that time they weren't a believer. So they weren't a believer and they heard, so the kuffar, they knew the mushrikeen, they knew about the Prophet because the Prophet doing Ilan and Nubuwwat, it didn't happen yet, but they knew the Prophet was up to something. The Prophet was spreading something. Why? Because they knew from the life of the Prophet that this person is not a normal person like us. And the Prophet, when they used to go to Dar Arqam with the Sahaba Ikram and read the Quran and talk about Islam, then it's mentioned that Abu Sufyan and there were two other companions. One night they heard that the Muslims gather in this place and they do the ibadat in that place. They mentioned one night that they left, and one of them left thinking, okay, today I'm going to go and I'm going to see that what these people do there. Obviously, they want to know, just know that they is. So they went there and they heard the Prophet reading Quran Pak, reading Quran Pak to the Sahaba Ikram. They mentioned that they went at night time. So when everybody was asleep, they went at night time, they sneaked out and they went to this place, Dar Arqam, and they listened to the Prophet reading Quran Pak, and they just started listening, and next thing they realized that the sun had risen. It became sunlight, sun had risen. So then they got worried that people will see them. So the three people, they all escaped. Then Abu Sufyan who wasn't a believer, they escaped. Along the way, the other two mushrikeen who also, the names are mentioned but slipped my mind, they meet each other in the same place. So whilst they bump into each other, whilst they were trying to run away from listening to the Quran Pak secretly, so they run away and they bump into each other. And he's like, oh, what are you doing? And they asked each other, like, what are you doing? And they were like, they were the great people of the Quraysh, so they were the Sardar, they were the leaders. So they said to one another, if people see us doing this, they're just going to go berserk and they're going to accept Islam, they're going to go accept this person. So then they all agreed, three of them, okay, this is the last time this happened and we're not going to do this again. So okay, all three of them agreed and they went away, they went to their houses, spent the rest of the day. That same night, subhanAllah, at night time, the urge, because they heard the Quran Pak, subhanAllah, the Quran Pak, when it's read, it's trying, because they were Arabs, they were Fasih people, they knew about the language of Arabic. And the Quran Pak, subhanAllah, that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you can't bring a surah of the like of the Quran Pak, why? Because it is a Fusha language, it is a Fasih language. So these people, it struck their hearts hearing this great kalam coming from the Prophet. So the second night, the same thing was, the feeling in their heart was just, they're like, let's just go again. The other two won't be there today. Each one of them is thinking this, I'll go there today and they won't be there. I won't see them on the way back. So they go there again at night time. Subhanallah, spend the whole night there listening to the Quranic Pak recitation. Then once again the sun rises and they escape. And on the way back they bump into the one once again. They're like, oh, see you again, it's you again. And then okay, they make another promise, serious promise, it's not going to happen again. The second day is the second promise, and they go back again. And the third day the same thing happens. And subhanallah, the lesson we could take from this is the beauty of the Quranic Pak. And imagine subhanallah, the Prophet reciting the Quranic Pak upon whom he was nazil. Today then we hate his Qari, recite the Quran, very beautiful, it struck your heart. Imagine the Prophet reciting the Quran, the one who was nazil upon. Subhanallah. But these Arabs, they knew the beauty of this language, so it struck their hearts. So then later Sayyidina Abu Sufyan they accepted Islam, become Muslim. Many other events took place before the acceptance of the Islam, but you could say this is one of the suburbs, this is one of the causes in which they accepted Islam. So this is from Wahy, after the Wahy, Prophet comes to the Hadith, that all these events take place. And inshallah from next week, inshallah, we'll continue from here and further look at the acceptance of Islam of Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Hamza, the 40 Muslims become complete, and then from there inshallah I'll try to go maybe through the main events which took place in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then from them taking the lessons which we could take. So then the summary of today's, you could say, the lessons we could learn from today's lesson. Also from last week, I just added them a couple lessons in also because there were quite a few people last week as well here. But today is starting officially that how the person, they're not a bashar like us. They're not a human like us. They're human, but they're not human like us. Also the iman of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's beloved parents, which there are many in the line, Quran, ayat, hadith, mention the proof of the Prophet's parents being believers. So today they need some people, they make these Prophet's parents not believers. No, this is incorrect. And then the lessons for the sisters, we could say about how we should be supportive if one is married to their husband, how we should comfort them in the time of need, and how one can be a successful woman, but also at the same time be pure and be soft. This is the lesson we could just learn from these pure lives, and also advice to study the seerah of these great people. That's why, because we could spend, like I mentioned at the beginning, that lives have finished and pens have broken, but the Prophet are soft, the characters, they were one complete chapter of that is complete. Why? Because the Prophet desire is just too beautiful, one could study it all his life, and you could just still never do it kama haqquhu. So the dua, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first of all gives me the tawfiq to act upon anything which has been said. And if I have said anything wrong, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, especially to the media, inshallah. Do dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the tawfiq to act upon the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this blessed month, another lesson I mentioned at the beginning, how we should send salawat, durushim upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam whenever we can. We should do it at all times. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu zkurullaha dhikran kaseera. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in abundance. So when we read durush, we say sallallahu ta'ala ala nabi Muhammad as-salatu wa-salam alayka ya sayyidi ya Rasulullah. Or then we also do dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallallahu, we mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ism al-Pak also. Meaning the Prophet sallallahu dhikr, it's also in essence you could say the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So another lesson we could be to read root upon the Prophet sallallahu as much as we can in this blessed month, and attend these mawalid, the mawlid methods that take place today in it. We should definitely go to them. But the purpose of going to them is not to just go there and read Nata all day and then miss namaz, or go to these kinds of free mixing. We seek refuge from these kind of places, because these are places where shaitan likes to be. It's easy to attack in these places. Person will be reading a Nata Mahfil, it starts after Isha and it finishes in the morning, 2, 3 o'clock. Person goes to sleep, no fajr. In the morning, next Nata Mahfil. No, this is incorrect, it's totally incorrect. This is not what the Prophet's life teaches us. You rather go to a mawlid, sit there for 10-20 minutes, take a lesson or two, and that's off you go, take your leave. If you teach language sharif also, it's barakat in that. But prayer, these are things like this, they're essential. That's what this is the thing which is taking us far away from the deen today's day and age. The essentials, the things which are farz, wajib, sunnah mu'akkada, sunnah ghayr mu'akkada, we don't concentrate on them, but the things which are mustahab, mubah, the things which are, if you do, you get reward, if you don't do, you don't get reward. If you do, you get reward, if you miss them, there's not so much of a great year. But then the thing like farz, like the 5 prayers, you can't miss your 5 prayers. Like the Prophet says in the Hadith, that as-salatu imaduddin, that namaz is a pillar of deen. So like imagine one can build this nice fancy house or whatever he's going to build, and the pillar is not there. He might get something, he probably won't be able to lift it because there's no pillar. But if he does lift the building, the construction, for example, he does nawafil, he leads a lot of nawafil, he does gives a lot of sadaqah and things like that, but he has no pillar. Eventually when that building gets, it's going to fall because there's no pillar. But if a person has a pillar, he reads his namaz, 5 daily namaz, and on top he has a roof. So he does sadaqah, he reads his nawafil, but there's not much. But his pillar is strong. He has a roof, at least his roof won't fall with it, because his pillar is strong. But today day and age, there's no pillar and it's just decorations everywhere, which is wrong. So you know the purpose. The purpose of the Prophet is to pray all night. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "O my beloved, come in layla illa qalila." Don't stand all the night. The person blessed with Mubarak used to get swollen because of praying all night. And if people are celebrating Mawlid and now you're praying the Fajr prayer, and this is incorrect, it's something which to stay away from. And we should go to Mawalid Mahfils, but still, we should learn lessons from it and go with a good spirit and come with a good spirit. I do dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first of all gives me the tawfiq. Fact for anything which I said, I have said it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, forgive me. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم. آمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد صلاة تنجينا بها من جميع الأهوال والآفات وتقضي لنا بها جميع الحاجات وتطهرنا بها من جميع السيئات وترفعنا بها عندك أعلى الدرجات وتبلغنا بها الغايات من جميع الخيرات الحياة وبعد الممات إنك على كل شيء قدير ارحمنا يا مولانا. السلام عليكم.